Good day to everyone. My name is K.S. Matthew. I am professor in the Department of Computer Science, Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology, Kochi. Welcome to the course EST200 Design and Engineering, Module 2 Design Thinking, Part 1B. In the last video, we have discussed on what is design thinking and what design thinking is not, and how to form the design team for your project. In this session, we are going to discuss various stages of design thinking and various tools and techniques used in design thinking. So now let us look at what are the stages in design thinking, product design and development stages. There are three stages in product design and development called 3 I's. This is the IDEO model of design thinking. There are three stages as per the IDEO model, 3 I's. The first I is inspiration, which includes the activities of empathize, analyze and define. Second stage is called ideation. It includes ideate, activity called ideate. Third stage is implementation, prototyping and testing. There is another similar terminology used in some books, 3 I's, similar to IDEO model 3 I's, but slightly modified IDEO model. Terminologies are slightly different. Identify, invent and implement, 3 I's. The second framework popular is from British Design Council. It is called double diamond approach of 4 Ds. Double diamond approach of 4 Ds from British Design Council. So you can see two diamonds. The first diamond represents the problem domain, and the second diamond represents the solution domain. And in the problem domain as well as in the solution domain, there are two phases. One is a divergent phase. In the first, on the left side, you can see divergent phase. So the arrows are diverging, right? Arrows are diverging here. This is the divergent phase. And then there is a convergence, right? This is the problem domain. Now you have the solution domain. Again, there are two phases, divergence, then convergence, right? So if you look at the activities, it is the same as the previous IDEO model. So in the problem domain, divergence stage, you have two activities of empathize and analyze. Try to understand the problem. Empathize and analyze and identify all the problems of the user. Then in the convergent phase of the problem domain, you define the problem clearly, specifically. So out of all the issues identified from the user, which are the problem you are trying to solve at this point of time, and define that problem. So you are going to converge to the right problem to be solved. You will, at this stage, you will come up with the right problem to be solved. Then you move on to the solution stage. Again, there is divergent phase. First activity is ideate. You try to generate multiple alternative solutions for solving the problem. So it's again a divergence. You are trying to get as many solutions as possible. So it's a divergent phase. Then you will evaluate the solutions and come up with and shortlist the solutions and finally choose the best solution and prototype that solution, a chosen solution, and test that prototype again with the users, right? So it is again convergence. In the second half of the second diamond is again convergence, prototype and test. So there is divergence is analysis and convergence is synthesis, and here also problem domain, solution domain also there is a analysis phase or divergent phase, and there is a convergent phase. And 4 Ds are discover, define, develop and deliver. So discover the problem, right? Discover the problem, identify the problem of the user, discover. Then define the problem and decide which are the problems you are trying to address at this point of time, define the problem. And develop the concept for solving the problem, come up with multiple alternative concepts for solving the problem. Then finally choose the best solution or concept and prototype the solution and deliver the test and fine-tune the solution and finally deliver the solution. Another framework, popular is called What4 Gene Litka, What-X4 Gene Litka, Darden School of Professor, Darden School of Business, University of Virginia. There are books by Gene Litka on design thinking. So this is the approach framework suggested by Litka, which can be related to other models as well. So in this there are 4 stages: what is, what if, what was, and what works. What is we are trying to analyze what is the current state of the user, right? Value chain analysis, what is the current state of the user is analyzed in the what if stage. And what if stage, we ideate and see what if we do like this, whether it is going to be better than the current. What if the future, we think about future and see what if we do like this in the future compared to the current. So you will be trying out with alternative different ways of doing the same thing and alternative solutions. And out of that, what wows the customer? Then you choose the best one out of the ideas generated during the what if stage, right? By brainstorming. Then you select and develop the concept of ideas generated. Then in the what wow stage, you try to choose the best solution, best concept, what wows the customer, right? Choose the best one and then test which one works in the user field, in the user environment. Select the final solution and deliver the solution, what works, which works. Multiple concept may be wowing the customer, customer may be selecting multiple concept, but once you prototype and test it, some of the concept may not work. So keep on doing this experiment and finally select what works with the customer and what solves the problem. That approach is called What-X4 by Gene Litka. But if you look at the activities are more or less same. Here you will have journey map, value chain analysis, mind mapping, storming, concept development, assumption testing, prototyping is there, customer co-creation, testing with the user, learning launch, all that different activities and in different stages, which can be related to other phases in the other framework. Now we'll go to inspiration stage. Inspiration stage is about understand the opportunity or the customer needs or a problem to solve, analyze and define the problem. There are 3 steps: empathize, analyze and define. Empathize stage, there are a lot of tools in the empathize phase: user personas, intentional empathy, empathy map, customer journey map, custom interviews or like dislike method we talked about before, observation, storytelling, storyboarding, questionnaire or surveys, focus groups and workshops. So these are various tools we can use in the empathize phase, right? So we will discuss these tools one by one. We will skip the tools which we have seen already, but other tools we'll be discussing here. And then in the inspiration stage, second activity is analyze. So in the empathize phase, we will identify the customer's needs and problems. And here in this stage, we will analyze the problems and identify the root causes of the problem, identify the conflict between problems or needs. So that is what is done in analyze phase. We will try to find the root causes of the problem. Also, we will try to identify the conflict in needs of the users. Then define the problem. You will define the problem statement and you will develop some questions called how might be questions, which will be helpful while doing the next stage of ideation. So user personas is one of the tools used in the empathize phase. User personas are a representation of your target customers. First thing is to understand who are your customers. You need to understand everything about your customer. You need to learn the customer biodata. You need to have a biodata of the customer. So user persona is nothing but a detailed biodata of your target customer. That is what is user persona. So creating user personas will help, involves researching and outlining your ideal customers goals, their pain points, their behavior, Their other information, basic demographic information, all this has to be researched for creating user personas. So personas will allow designers to relate to and empathize with the customers, empathize with the users. So personas will encourage the designers to view the problem from a user's perspective, not from the designer's perspective, from the user's perspective. So if you have a full clarity on the user characteristics or the user persona, it will help the designers to think about the problem from the user's. This is the sample template for a user persona. The name of the user, you can give a imaginary name for the user. You need not expose the real name. You can give some name. You can have a photo of the user and background information of the user like age, gender, location, marital status, education, occupation. What are the motivations of this user? What are the things that motivate this particular user, motivates or make this user happy? What are the goals of the user? What are the responsibilities of this person in his work in day-to-day life, including personal as well as the official day in the life of? What are the needs of this person, and what are the frustrations and pain points of this user? So these are the things you need to document to prepare a user persona for your target customers. So you need to identify what are the different type of target customers you have, and for each type you need to choose some one or two users in that category and create the user persona for that particular category. So one or two user personas for each category can be created for a project. If there are multiple categories, you need to have user personas for different category of people. So this is a example user persona. You have the age, demographic information like age, occupation, status, location, expert, goals of the user, what are the frustrations, what are the motivations, biodata, and the personality type, extrovert, introvert, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving, technology awareness. All this can be documented. And this is another user example. So it's a full-time interior designer student and a part-time worker, 20 years old, female, single, lives in San Francisco, California. And day in the life of Sarah. Sarah is the name of the student, and a day in the life of Sarah, early mornings. Late night describes her daily routine, so she lives on coffee. So these are different details collected to prepare the user persona, and that will be documented. And the difficulty faces at old age. There are two purposes for this. One could be
Meet Agnes, the MIT Age Lab's Age Gain Now Empathy System. This suit was designed to provide insight into the physical effects of aging. The various components simulate the changes that occur naturally as we age. Put on this suit and you feel increased fatigue, reduced flexibility in joints and muscles, spinal compression, and difficulty with vision and balance. Altogether, Agnes is more than just a suit. It is a calibrated method developed and constructed by exercise physiologists, engineers, and designers. As demographics shift, we need to fully understand the needs of an aging population to design a future that is accessible and engaging for people of every age. Agnes is a better way to see how a product, service, or environment is used and navigated by an older adult because it allows us to experience it for ourselves. Agnes is one tool that we use at the Age Lab to study and improve life tomorrow.
This is another video which you can watch later by this is a TED talk by Doug Dietz, who is the inventor of MRI scanner, and here he explains the importance of empathy while designing the product. So after designing the first version of the MRI, he realized that his design is not good because it creates a lot of difficulty and the pain and frustration for the small children. and he went back to the drawing board and tried to redesign the MRI scanner for the children by after empathizing with that child, with children, right? So you can watch this video to understand the importance of empathizing with the users.
I thought I'd start with this, which is kind of a little bit of the thread or the kind of the heartbeat of my story today. And you've heard a lot about the design thinking and the design process that a lot of these folks have gone through, very powerful tools. And I just want to emphasize that empathy at the beginning for me is something that I think is really what is the heartbeat of the project when you move forward. And a lot of times when you move forward into the iteration and prototyping and some of the design phases that you go through, you need to actually refocus back and see what the empathy was that actually got you started at the beginning. So I thought I would just share a quick story with you guys. And this is a little tough story to tell, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I had just finished designing a big MR scanner. How many people here have an MR scan? It's a big MRI scan. Oh my gosh, a lot of you guys, so don't charge the stage. So I had just finished designing this big MR scanner, and I was very proud. I think I had worked on this thing for probably about 2 years. And I'm an industrial designer, and I was doing the enclosures and the controls and displays and the coils and patient transfer, that kind of stuff. And I was so excited to see this, the first product that we installed. So I went to see it in its actual environment in the hospital. So I was just running through this hospital to check out my new product that I had just finished. I'm really excited. And I kind of almost like barged in, took my wallet and all the metal stuff out of my pockets, and ran in and was, with my baby, and I was just a proud papa, basically. And I remember the technologist coming in and saying, we have a patient that's going to be coming through, so could you step out for a little bit? I said, sure, no problem. I'll come back in. We can talk later. And I remember walking out, and I was standing in the hallway, and this is kind of what I saw down the hallway. I saw this young family coming down the hallway, and I'm just standing in the hallway, and they're coming toward, and I can tell as they get closer, the little girl is weeping. And as they even get closer to me, I notice the father just leans down and just goes, remember, we've talked about this. You can be brave. And they turn to walk into the MR suite, and I kind of follow them in. And I still remember it like it was today, guys. I'm standing behind the little girl. She's probably about 7. And I'm looking into this environment that I was just standing in. I was just in there, in this environment, just, doing my happy dance, right? And she just freezes. And looking at her angle and just seeing in that same environment where I was just standing, I realized that this is something totally different. On the wall is that, horrible warning sticker. It's got the magnet and the big exclamation point. It's got that yellow and black tape, like on the thing, like, almost like a accident scene. Everything looks really kind of like beige. It's got this kind of weird colored flooring and, just kind of everything's bleached out. And then the room itself is kind of dark, and it kind of has those flickering fluorescent lights. And the machine itself that I designed basically looked like a brick with a hole in it. And then, of course, an MRI, for you folks that have had one, it is just a terrible noise. So the little girl just starts to really cry. I mean, she's just breaking down. And I can tell you guys, I'm standing behind and I see these parents. And for you guys that are parents, they're looking at each other. And they don't have to say a word because they don't know how they're going to get their child through this. So that was a huge awakening for me. So the challenge that we have here is you've got that little guy, and he needs to go through a scan in that. And what does that look like to you guys? What does that machine look like? Big clamp, looks like a stapler. I mean, it looks like a transformer. It's just ridiculous. And guys, this is a color picture. This is a color picture. So really this experience the family goes through and the child goes through looks like those little footprints on the bottom. It looks like a anxiety curve. And that really starts when they first understand that they need a scan. or they're in their car coming to the hospital. And it just starts to ramp up as they get to the hospital, and you know how it is. You get on like 9 elevators, and you follow the blue line on the floor, and you get to the site, and when they come in contact with this piece of equipment, the tears start to come way up in there. And actually at the bottom of that arc, it really doesn't even flatten out that much. And just working with these young families and these parents, I spent some time with this one father, and I remember they had to sedate his son, and in this modality, nuclear medicine, they have to sedate the children about 80% of the time so they can scan them. And he was carrying his little boy out to the parking lot because he had had sedation, and I'm walking out with him just to thank him, and all of a sudden he just stops. And he's got this kind of weird look on his face, and I'm like, "What's up?" And he goes, "I forgot where I parked my car." Why do you think he forgot where he parked his car? Absolutely. I mean, it's just, and my hypothesis and some of the ideas I even had at the beginning, things like they would be worried about, are they going to diagnose what's wrong with their child? Is insurance going to pay for this? Is my boss going to get mad because I had to take off work again? All those things that I thought he would be worried about and the family would be worried about, their number one thing was, how am I going to get my child through this? So this is where we started, and I just thought I'd throw this in. It's kind of a cool picture. This is our first brainstorming session at a local daycare. That's kind of cool. And you guys probably notice here some of my very young designers, even younger than some of the high school kids that came up here. I went to the source. And what was really neat about this one, I remember this little boy in the white there. And he was actually had the crayons, and he was actually just sticking them in the cracks. He wasn't coloring like some of the other children that were down the way there. And I realized right off the bat when I was looking at this little boy and he's just sticking those crayons in the crack, that I had to learn more about some of the developmental stages of children and some of these things that would cause the anxiety for this to see if I could make it better. So, I tried myself, and I told you guys, I basically failed at my job when I did the scanner. So I got some experts. So here's Fern Schupeck up at the top. I love her pose. She's very passionate. And she's the director of the Betty Brinn Museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm from. And both her and her team came in, and we did lots of brainstorming sessions actually at the museum, up with the kids down. They have a really cool area. These are actually, most of the people that are on that picture on the right there are customers, actually bringing the customers into this innovation, this ideation session with us to come up with some really strong solutions. So we have the director of radiology there, Kathleen Capson, and Sarah's a child life specialist, and Steve is a nurse. Just great team to do that, and these are just some of the sketches here. And what came very apparent to me, kind of in the middle of this, especially working with the kids, is what is 3 kitchen chairs and a blanket? Fort, castle, boat, shelter, truck, you name it, it's everything. And how long will they play with it? Forever. Because they've got this fertile imagination. They've got this place where they can go to do this. So what can we do with that? This is actually a picture of my desk when I was working on this that I threw in here just to remind me that, there's a lot of the right brain that went into this particular project. And I want to walk you through a couple of the rooms that we developed for these children to help them get through this situation. These are some of our pilot rooms that are actually at the University of Pittsburgh, a UPMC hospital. And this one right here, this one actually is the same machine as you saw that was the stapler. We just worked a little bit on the design, softened it out. We have a ring now instead of that big clamp. But what's magical about this room is you got to imagine, these pictures don't really do it justice. You got to imagine when you go in there, there's this like light blue sky that's cascading down. We tickle all the senses. We have aromatherapy in there, and I believe in this one we have kind of like a water scent that's kind of a nice, kind of a soothing scent. It has a little lavender in it, kind of relaxing to do that. We have, of course, some of the graphics. So on the back, you'll see there's a waterfall that cascades off the wall. It comes down underneath the scanner, and there's a koi pond that comes out below. And what's magical about this part is the rocks that are the border actually come, and they come down the room, and they go out the hallway. And what's so cute is you'll see the little boys and girls, and they're going like this. They're walking on the stones, right? They're coming into the room. And they're looking back, and they're going, Dad, Mom, you got to get on the rocks. And they're coming into the room. 3 chairs and a blanket, right? They're in this special mode. They come into this room, guys, and the table actually lowers down into the water. Looks like it lowers down into the water, and it's a hollowed-out canoe. So there's a reason this hollowed-out log that they're laying on their back, and then they tell them, this is kind of like a boat, and you need to hold still. It's real important so you don't rock the boat. And this is the magic. If you really hold still, the fish will start jumping over the top of you. And these kids are like statues. They're frozen. And of course, our detectors there slowly start to go around these kids, and they just love it. And for a modality like this, where they sedate them maybe 80% of the time, I think this machine's been in for a couple of years now, or about a little over a year, and they've sedated like 2 kids. Like 0.0 something something. Oh, here's a couple more. This one's Pirate Adventure. This one is, it's funny, I say they're all my favorites, so get used to that. This is my favorite. So when you walk into this room, you come in on a dock, and the floor is kind of this watercolor. It's right here. You walk in, you come in on a dock. There's a shipwreck that's in the corner. There's some sand castles. It's just beautiful. And then there's actually a plank there that you can see that you actually walk the plank to go onto the scanner. Of course, right? And what's kind of magical about this one, we couldn't affect the design as much on this one as we did on the nuclear scanner. But if you look really close, that picture on the bottom there, that black and white picture, is the same room as the top one. And if you look at we call it the bore, if you look at the circle where you go through, we put the steering wheel there with those radial handles on there. And look at that. That's the same piece of equipment. Doesn't it look like we stretched it out? Like maybe 20% or something. I mean, it looks so much bigger in that one. It's the same piece of equipment. And this one, the story that goes with this is pretty powerful. There were a bunch of cabinets in this room. And when we're talking to the kids of the things that scared them in the room, this particular one, they said, that reminds me of the dentist. Not a good thing. So we got a little creative, and we made a tiki hut. You can see a little of the top of it there. We did a tiki hut there, and then for our aromatherapy in there, we put pina colada. And what's so cute about that is the parents, when they come in, and they're in there, and usually the child's playing with, around. We have characters on the wall that they're hugging and they're naming. It's really cute. And you'll see the parents, they're looking at each other, and they go, "Is that what I think it is? Is that?" And you go, "Yeah, that's." And they go, "Can we have one?" So no. Sorry, we know that would help you get through, but no. I'm sorry you can't have one. But I was actually. What's nice about that, too, is when the children see their parents, kind of elbowing each other, thinking of, about their honeymoon in Bermuda or something, having a pina colada, they're smiling, and the children are really picking up on this. And I learned for sure, if you've got the child, you get the parent. If you get the parent, you can get the child, because they're always looking for that reaction, which is really cool. And the story that goes with this one is, so I'm talking with the parents about the pina colada, actually, and the little girl had already just had her scan. And I'm talking with the parents, and the little girl keeps coming up, and she's pulling on her mom's shirt. And about on the 2nd or 3rd time, the mom, kind of interrupts, and she goes, "What is it, honey?" And the little girl looks up, and she says, "Can we come back tomorrow?" So I'm just... that's a pretty powerful thing. I had gone from, really thinking, and I did screw up, to having this little girl say, "Can we come back tomorrow?" So unfortunately, I was doing exactly what I'm doing here. And I look down at the floor, and I can see the tears hitting the floor, and I'm just going, "Oh man, this sucks." And, I don't have a Kleenex like I don't have now. But I look over, and standing next to me is the technologist, and I see that she's shaking. I'm going, "Oh no, this is not good." So I look up at her. She's bawling. She has mascara coming down her face. And I'm thinking to myself, oh man, this is not good. I can see my performance review now, you know. Next year, try not to make the customer cry. You know. So, that was a tough experience, but I remember going in later that day and talking with her, and she was sitting in the room. It's hard to see in here, but her window, she looks out the sandcastle. And I put my hand on her shoulder, and I just said, I'm really sorry. I really didn't. And she stops me, and she looks up, and she really just says, you don't understand. This experience reminded me of why I got into healthcare. So with this environment of, it's probably like a lot of us that work in industry and stuff, there's all this crap. There's HIPAA laws, there's all of this stuff that just gets in the way. Our sophisticated medical equipment is really hard to work on. All that stuff gets in the way. She had forgotten why she got into healthcare, and it was to help kids. So that's what she got. So, though I really had this kind of very specific focus on children and the families, I didn't even quite realize that it really cascaded out to the parents. Really good. I have a couple more I'd love to show you here. This one's cool. This one actually is Coral City. This one is actually in an emergency room. So can you imagine the hectic craziness of an emergency room, and all of a sudden here's this nautical adventure, and you can see it has these beautiful blue walls, and they dim the lights. And in this one, there's a disco ball in the back, and we hit it with white light, and it looks like bubbles everywhere. It's unbelievable. And in this one, I think they have like this really subtle harp music. I mean, it's mesmerizing, especially in the MR. It's really cool. And of course, they get on a yellow submarine, and they go up, and they go in. This one, of course, is my favorite. This is being a camper too. This is Cozy Camp. This is really kind of neat. So you come into the room, you can see it's kind of got that purple wall. It's kind of like the evening. There's 1,000 stars. You can almost see that they're moving on the walls and the ceiling. And the child comes in, and that table lowers down, and it's a sleeping bag. And they get on the sleeping bag, and they go up, and they go inside the tent. And what's really neat about this is the actual technologist can't be in the room, and this is a PET CT scanner. So they actually go over here in their camper, and that's their window that the technologist look out. It's kind of cool. It's really neat. So that's pretty fun, isn't it? That's a cool picture. And if you're not having fun, it's half your fault. This is sometimes, this kind of stuff can, even though it's very empathetic and there's some really neat stuff in here and there's a real meaning, you can have a lot of fun. And we did this with some of the development team that worked with us, which is really neat. And probably the last thing I just want to leave you guys with here is really that when you design for meaning, good things will happen. And sometimes if you go the other way around, which a lot of times we do, where you're designing for money or you're designing for some of these other things and you're hoping that meaning comes, it doesn't work that way. And though we got the sedation to be reduced significantly here, and I think their patient satisfaction in this hospital went up 92%. And their patient volume also went up, so they're able to get more children in a day, which makes the actual waiting list and some of the time that you have to wait for a scan a lot less. So a lot of people ask me things like, are you really proud of those things? Which I think I really am. And they ask me if I kind of measure the success of this on those things. And I'll be honest with you, I don't. What I really think I would measure myself in this kind of a project is, have I had influence on that conversation in the car on the ride home for that family? And if I've had that opportunity to make that a different kind of conversation for this family, and you've seen some things already in some great talks on how you interact with healthcare, if it is just a totally different conversation in that car, and it's maybe one of those things where they just embrace the experience a little bit better, because a lot of times in healthcare, this is like a speed bump in the road for these folks. And if we can just make that a little bit smaller speed bump, if we can turn it into more of an experience, I think it's going to be a real positive thing. Thank you very much.
Then the second, another tool that can be used is empathy map. So while you understand the user's pains and why you are trying to help a user, you need to go through the experience he is going through in doing some activity, for example, or some other experiences, and try to capture what he or she says, what he or she thinks, what he or she feels, and what he or she does while doing that activity or while going through that experience. So you need to observe and empathize with the users and capture all these aspects. What he or she says, what he or she thinks, what he or she feels, what he or she does during that journey, right? And they're going through that experience while doing that particular activity, right? So here there is an empathy map of a user going to buy a TV. What are the feelings or thinking, or what he says and does when he is planning to buy a new TV, right? So you can write all these various things on a post-it slip. What he says, you can write it on slips and paste it in this quadrant, first quadrant. Then whatever things you can write it on post-it slip and paste in this quadrant. What he feels can be written, each feeling can be written on one slip and post it here. And what he does while he goes through that experience of buying a TV, you can write it on post-it slip and paste it here. Customer journey map is another tool which can be used with the empathize phase. Here, again, you are going through empathizing with the customer and trying to understand his journey when he does an activity or when he is going through a particular experience. Write the major steps of the assist customer experience in post-it slips. Use one sticky note per step. Then arrange the notes in the chronological or time order. After doing that, this first three steps you can do based on your own understanding or your own observation or your experience in watching such customers. You can first do these 3 steps based on your own experience. Then you can go to selected users and interview them and try to modify whatever you have understood from your own experience. You can try to modify that. Correct the procedure according to the new insight. Then mark the notes with emotional highs and lows. For each step, you can also indicate the feelings of the user that when he does that activity using an emoji, a smiley or a sad face or whatever, right? It is better to divide this activity at least into 3 stages. What happens before he does that activity, or before he is going through this experience, what happens during that experience or during that activity, what happens, and after the activity or after going through that experience, what happens. So at least there should be 3 stages in journey map. You can have more stages, it is better always, but at least there should be 3 stages. And in each stage, there will be multiple steps in each stage. So before doing an activity, what are the different steps he or she does? So this is an example journey map of a lady, 35 years old, Mrs. Sanvi. Mom is a mom working in Delhi, and mom usually goes to work by motorcycle. So we are trying to help this user in improving his life experience in commuting to work, right? So before she commutes to work, what happens? Mom and dad pack lunch for kids and themselves. Mom gets kids ready for school, and mom puts on her scarf and wears a helmet. That's what happens before. So you have the smileys here. So this is happy. When she does pack lunch, she is happy. This is neutral. There is no particular emotion as such. And when she puts on her scarf and wears the helmet, that is not a comfortable activity. So she feels sad, right, at this stage. And during the activity, what happens? Mom gets the vehicle out of the garage, neutral. Mom rides in traffic, exposed to sunlight, heat, and dust. She isn't happy. And mom stops at several places and adjusts her hair and costume. She is working as a front office executive receptionist, for example, and she cares about her appearance very much while sitting in the front desk. So she is worried about her makeup and hair and all while traveling. So in between, she stops the scooter and adjusts her hair and the costume. That she is not happy in doing that really. And after what happens, after reaching the office, what happens? Mom parks the bike in the parking spot. Mom takes off her helmet and scarf, and mom walks to the work gate, right? And she is happy. Here she is not happy. So that's how a journey map is. Another example, a persona, a middle-aged mother traveling with a 5-year-old child. So this is what happens before. Mother is traveling with a 5-year-old child to Pune in a car. Child urgently wants to use the toilet. Mother starts looking around for a clean toilet to use on the way, but can't find anything nearby, unhappy. And then child starts complaining even more, unhappy. And she finds a toilet. She's happy. Mother and child walks. And during what happened, mother and child enter the public toilet and find it to be unhealthy, unhygienic, unhappy. They stand in a long queue while bearing a dirty stink, again unhappy. The child uses the facility and discovers that the flush won't work, unhappy. Mother takes the child to wash her hands and finds that there is no water in the tap and there is no toiletries provided, unhappy. Mother pays the applicable charge to use the facility and exits, happy. After what happens, the mother buys a new bottle of water to wash hands. Mother and child sits in the car and continue the journey, happy. Customer journey map, you can give an exercise for doing the customer journey map for your to your students. Focus of your startup is to solve some of the problems small school children face when they travel to school and back. Develop customer journey map so as to identify the problems small school children face when they travel. And this we have already another tool, customer survey, market survey. This I'm going to skip because we have already seen this in the Storytelling is another useful, very effective tool for conveying a problem to another person, a designer. Conveying a problem it can be used for various purposes. So storytelling is also good for conveying a problem to others, right? You can tell the problem as a story, which will help others to understand the problem in a clear manner. So it's a skill. Storytelling is a skill. It is not possible for everyone to do it effectively, but we should try to improve that skill. So I am trying to improve that skill. I am not good at storytelling. I'm trying to improve that skill by telling a lot of stories during this course in different stages, right? I already told different stories of people coming up with innovative solutions. So I'm trying to improve that skill. So I will try to tell a story at this point to convey a problem to you, and for which you can think of solutions, right? The name of my story is Porthos and his tailor. So Porthos is the main character of my story, and this is a character in the story Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. So Porthos is one of the three musketeers in the story Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. Porthos is not the main character of Three Musketeers. It is just one character of Three Musketeers, and main character is someone else, Artagnan. But Porthos is the main character of my own story, that is Porthos and his tailor. Now I will try to tell some characteristics of Porthos. Who is Porthos? The Three Musketeers. So this is the figure of Three Musketeers: Porthos, Athos, and Aramis. They are the Three Musketeers of Musketeers in the story of Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. So Porthos is my character in my story. Porthos is assume you are the tailor of Porthos, and Porthos wants to have a good fitting, fashionable cloth for going to the birthday party of one of his lovers, right? Ladies, next week. So you are supposed to stitch a fashionable, good-fitting cloth for those, right? So in order to take the measurement of the cloth, you need to use a tape. You need to use a tape for taking the measurement. But when you use a tape for taking the measurement, you are going to touch him, right? So he doesn't like to be touched. If somebody touches him, he will take the sword and cut his head, right? So you cannot use the measuring tape to take the measurement so that you can stitch a fashionable, good-fitting cloth. If you touch, your head will go, right? So how do you take measurement? If you don't use measuring tape, maybe you can look at him and try to guess the measurements and stitch a cloth, right? But if the cloth doesn't fit him, and if it is not good fitting cloth, he will be angry again. He will be angry again, he will take the sword and your head will go, right? So this is the scenario. So you are supposed to stitch a good fitting cloth for your customer, the pothos, but how do you take the measurement to stitch the cloth so that you will be able to deliver a good fitting cloth for him and he will be happy? At the same time, you will not touch him, right? So try to think of solutions for solving this problem, right? So this is an example of a storytelling to convey a problem. So we'll come back to this problem later in another stage. So you can think of various solutions and we will discuss that in the storytelling. You can watch this video. This is again about storytelling.
In 2009, a man, a journalist, by the name Rob Walker, wanted to find out is storytelling really the most powerful tool of all? And in order to do this, he went on his computer and he bought 200 objects from eBay. And the average price of the objects were about $1. He then called 200 authors and he asked them, hey, would you like to be part of the significant object study? Which means that I would like to write a story to one of the objects. And 200 authors said yes. So there he had 200 objects, he had 200 stories, and I assume that it was with nail-biting anticipation that he went on eBay again with all the 200 objects. Would there be a difference? Would there be a change? Do you think there was a change? One of the objects was this beautiful horse's head. There we go. The beautiful horse's head. Now this beautiful horse's head was bought for 99 cents and was sold when the story was added for $62.95. That is a slight increase of 6,395%. So was this a one-off situation? Not really, because he bought the 200 objects for a total of $129, selling them for $8,000. Now that's insane. But you know what's even more intellectually challenging to understand is how can you and I go to the movies and pay good money to watch movies like James Bond, who are absolutely unrealistic. And we sit there, we enjoy the movie, and some of us, we really enjoy the movie. And we leave the theater going like, God, what a man. I would like to be more like him. I'd like to walk like him. I'd like to talk like him. I like Bond. Wonder how I could be more like Bond. And then this weird revelation hits you like from nowhere, and you come up with a brilliant idea to walk to a watchmaker shop. And wow, it just happens to be an Omega watch in that shop that resembles the one that Bond was wearing in the movie. And you pay $10,000 to put that watch on your wrist, and you leave that store feeling more like Bond. How is that possible? PQ Media tells us that $10.5 billion is turned over in product placement revenue every single year. How is it possible for you to be so easily tricked by something so simple as a story? Because you are tricked. Well, it all comes down to one core thing, and that is emotional investment. The more emotionally invested you are in anything in your life, the less critical and the less objectively observant you become. And the greatest emotional investment of all is falling in love. Now, falling in love resembles a good story. Do you remember the last time you fell in love? Do you? Good for you. It's a beautiful feeling, isn't it? Do you remember how you longed and how you yearned and how you dreamt? And then you looked at her and maybe you thought, God, I love the way you chew that apple. So crunchy. Oh, and the way you slurp that tea just over the edge, you know. Oh, it's so sexy. Love it. And then about 13 months later, when you biochemically fall in out of love, 13 months later, on an average, you fall out of love. Suddenly, you find yourself sitting in the sofa. And you go, Jesus Christ, where did this thing come from? Oh my God, and where are my friends? This is a weird thing. And then suddenly you hear a sound. You go like, what's that? And you go over to the kitchen and you look and you go like, oh, it's you. You're eating an apple there. Could you just keep that down just a little bit? Yeah. You're kind of spraying the table there. Please don't. And you sit down comfortably again, and just a minute later you hear somebody drinking tea from the kitchen going, and suddenly this is all annoying to you. Have you been there? Sadly enough. 30 months later, our critical thinking and our cortex comes home from a 1-year-long vacation, and we start questioning things. Now, during those 30 months, what happened was that your brain was flooded with neurotransmitters and hormones, hijacking your cortex, throwing your objectively observant skills out of the window. And the thing with the storytelling is that the same thing can happen. In stories, the same hormones and neurotransmitters can be released. Hormones like vasopressin, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins. And do you know what? That's what I would like to do during my talk. I would like to induce 3 hormones into your brain. I call it the angel's cocktail, so it's a nice cocktail. I would like to start with radically increasing your dopamine levels. And I need your consent on this. Is it okay? Cool. And if you don't like the idea of that, you'll just have to cover your ears. So dopamine, this is what it looks like. And when you have that in your blood, these are the beautiful effects. You get more focus, more motivation, and you remember things in a better way. So what does dopamine feel like? It feels like this. About 6 years ago, I received a phone call from a woman who represented one of the biggest training companies in Scandinavia, and she said, hey, David, we've got a lot of trainers in presentation skills and in rhetorics, and we would like to increase the level of all of these. And we think you are a perfect pick. Would you like to come to a meeting? I'm like, wow, I'm honored. I'd love to. And I come up to Stockholm, and I'm going to their office, and just as I am going to pull the handle down, what I don't know then is that I'm walking into one of the absolute worst meetings I am ever going to have in my life. But I don't know that yet, so it's okay. I open the door, and I meet this woman. Her name is Lena. And hurriedly she says, David, just so you know, I'm not the one you're going to have this meeting with. You're going to have it with 3 gentlemen further on here. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit strange. Usually you know who you're going to have the meeting with. And then she progresses with a bit of chit-chatting, and then suddenly she says, are you ready now? And I'm like, yeah, what should I be ready for? And then she says, just so you know, can you see the room over there? And I go like, yes, I can see it. Well, in that room you have the 3 gentlemen. Just so you know, they're all majority owners of this company. They've all got an ex-military background, and none of them wants the training that you are going to pitch. I'm like, come on! Why am I here? And it's like, well, all the trainers want this, but the management they're on too high horses. They can't see that they need it. So it's pretty simple. The only thing you have to do is go in there and kind of, you know, just prove the opposite. I'm like, yeah, that sounds simple, doesn't it? And I can remember myself, I'm walking towards this office, my sweat is coming down my palms, my heart is racing, and just halfway there, she calls my name. And I still, to this day, don't know if this woman is sadomasochistic or just downright unintelligent. Because she calls my name and she goes like, David, and it's like I'm going to get a tip, you know, something like that. So I turn around to ask her, go like, and she says the following. If I don't tell you what she says there, is that annoying? Well, actually, as an example, I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to prove to you what it feels with high dopamine levels. Would you say that your focus was increased? Your attention was increased? You were creative, you created situations around this, and you probably already figured out what that room looked like, correct? And you remember that I did that to you for quite a while. Now, the feeling you had there was high levels of dopamine, which is beautiful. So how do you do that? Well, what you do is you build suspense, you launch a cliffhanger, and the most beautiful thing of all is that all storytelling is per definition dopamine creating, because it's always something that we're waiting and expecting. So just imagine, just by using storytelling, you can get those techniques. You don't have to do a cliffhanger like I did. So that was the first hormone. I'd now like to go to oxytocin. Is that okay as well? I'll induce that. All right. The beautiful effects of oxytocin are the following. You become more generous, you trust me more, and you bond to me. Do you want to do that? All right. All right, so this was 9 months have passed, and it was a planned cesarean. And the little brother, who was 5 years of age at that point of time, he was kind of really looking forward to what's going to happen. He was going to become a big brother. And he'd helped us pick out the wallpaper, he'd helped choose the bed linen. He'd even saved his own pocket money to buy a little stuffed animal, which was placed on the pillowcase. And about 2 days before the planned cesarean, something happened. Something wasn't right. The parents couldn't, something was off. And the day before, there was simply no movement in the stomach. There was no heartbeat. You couldn't feel or hear anything at all. So the parents were rushed into hospital, lay down on a bed, and the doctor comes in, checks the stomach, looks at me, and sees what I see, and that is that the heart is no longer beating for this child. This was me 9 years ago. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I don't know, can you just imagine what you have to tell, how you tell that to a 5-year-old? Can you just imagine that? Because he's home there waiting, anticipation for this coming event. But it won't happen. So part of me, and to handle that, I talk about it. And I've talked to you about it now. And now, you got higher levels of oxytocin in your blood, whether you want it or not. Which means that you feel more human, you're bonding to me, and you feel more relaxed. So how do you do that? In storytelling, you create empathy. So whatever character you build, you create empathy for that character. And oxytocin is the most beautiful hormone of all, because you feel human. Now the third and last hormone is endorphins, and I would like to show you a woman which we can say has overdosed on endorphins. Let's just look what that looks like. Oh, we'll go here.
To inspire and to respond. Are you speaking or listening?
I'm sorry. Just begin to listen.
To inspire and to respond.
To inspire and to respond.
And in all circumstances.
And in all circumstances.
Of our life together.
I'm sorry, of our life together. Of our life together.
Loyal to you
To be loyal to you
with my whole life
with my whole life
and with all my being
and with all my being
until death parts us.
until death parts us.
Oh, the timing of that is so lousy, isn't it? So how do you create endorphins? Well, you make people laugh. What happens then is that they become more creative, they become more relaxed, and again, they become more focused, which is beautiful to have. Now, all these three hormones that I've induced into your brain now is what I call the angel's cocktail. But there is an opposite of that cocktail, and I call that the devil's cocktail. And the devil's cocktail has high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. And they feel like this. Ah! Sorry to do that to you. So high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. And the problem with that is that if you got really high concentrations, which I didn't give you there, but when you got high concentrations, look at this. Is this something that you want to have the people you talk to have in their blood, in their system? No. Now, in our stressful work lives, in our stressful lives, many times, when you present, when you communicate, when you deliver meetings, which one do you think they've drunk most of? The devil's cocktail or the angel's cocktail? Most commonly, the devil's cocktail. And the problem then is that you've got all this to work against. But all of that can change today. All of that can change by you starting to use something I call functional storytelling. And functional storytelling means that you do these three things. 1, you have to understand that you don't have to be a bearded old man in front of a fireplace with a dark voice in order to be a great storyteller. In my experience, when I train people, everybody is a good storyteller from birth. The only problem is that you don't believe in it. The second thing is this: write down your stories. You'll notice that you have 3 to 4 times more stories in your life than you normally, or than you thought that you had. 3, index those stories. Which of your stories make people laugh, i.e. create endorphins? Which makes people feel empathy, i.e. oxytocin? And the next time you go into a meeting, you pick the story you want to release the hormone you wish in the person that you're talking to get exactly the desired effects that you want. And that's a beautiful thing. Now, you know me, some of you know me as Mr. Death by PowerPoint. And I want to round off with making my point very clear. And my point is this: 100,000 years ago, we started developing our language. It's sound to say that we started using storytelling to transfer knowledge from generation to generation. 27,000 years ago, we started transferring knowledge from generation to generation through cave paintings. 3,500 years ago, we started transferring knowledge from generation to generation through text. 28 years ago, PowerPoint was born. Which one do you think our brain is mostly adapted to? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Another tool is storyboarding. This is normally used by the filmmakers, movie makers. So before they start shooting, the designers will make images of various important scenes in the movie. They will draw the actual scenes as images and in sequence, which will help the director to visualize the entire movie sitting at his office, going through these images. And then based on that, they will choose the appropriate locations and go and shoot that scenes. So this is what is called storyboarding. This can be used for the other type of project also, not only for movie making. It can be used for other type of project also to visualize the problems faced by the users, for example. So it's a sequence of illustrations or images for the purpose of pre-visualizing a story, a scenario, a problem. So this is one storyboarding. So here one person, Angry Henry, goes to the break room before a meeting, he wants to have something, so he goes to the pantry to see something is there. He finds that the remnants of some cupcake, he finds that there is nothing, only some remains of some cakes are there, which he doesn't like. I hate just missing free food at work. So he thinks that he's unhappy. He thinks that he is unhappy. I hate just missing free food at work. And then he goes to the fridge and see whether anything is there. What I noting is the vending machine is also out of Hungry's favorite junk food. He goes to the vending machine and finds that that is also empty. And Hungry is a bit rude during his next meeting. He goes to the meeting without having any snacks. So he is upset and rude during his next meeting. His friend suggests. So he talks to his friend and tells there was nothing for me to take from the pantry. So his friend suggests that he tries to install the application Solomofu. Why don't you install Solomofu and get food alerts? Okay. So he installs that application. And next day, another colleague of Hungry Henry, Baking Beckett, comes with some cupcakes and drops off some fresh cupcakes in the pantry, which he made over the weekend. And I hope people find my cupcakes. And Baking Beckett tells Solomofu about a cupcake, and Hungry Henry immediately gets alerted. So she puts that message in the Solomofu application, cupcakes in the break room, and then the Hungry Henry gets a alert, and he comes to the pantry and take the food. After that, after having his cupcake, he is happy, and he's some in the next meeting. He is very happy in the next meeting. Right? That is the